wanted to use this week's podcast episode to talk about something that I think is critical in the world right now. We're in 2023, I'm recording this in early 2023, and the world has gone mad at the moment around AI, artificial intelligence. The term Chat GPT may not mean anything to you. If it doesn't mean anything to you, have a little look at it. It's a tool that's being created by some incredibly talented, bright people. And it's all around how you can now create everything pretty much. This database that's pretty much got like Google times a billion. It's got every answer that you can create. And what I want to talk about today is actually around why I think sales and selling and the ability to sell to people is the last thing that I think AI and robots will be able to do. And I wanted just to talk about that and explain a few things as to why I mean, and link back to 5 characteristics which I believe are really critical when it comes to salespeople and business people being successful, that as far as I know right now, AI can't do and can't do for a little while. Now, what I should say is that it may well be the AI in time. You know, if 2023, goodness knows what 5 years is going to look like. 1 year ahead from where we are right now. But the world has gone really mad around Chat GPT, and if you haven't had a look at it, there are tools like Chat GPT. Tools like Mid-Journey, where you can basically get a robot to create things for you. Artificial intelligence, there's this great database, and I'm not going to go into the technicalities. I don't understand the elements of coding and how it works, but some very clever people have used robot learning and machine learning to create computers that provide answers. So if you go onto ChatGPT and you type in a subject such as, how should I start a first sales meeting? It will give you a whole set of information on how to approach that first sales meeting that's built up as a database from lots and lots of information that it's built up over time. And you can even then re-interrogate it. You can ask it to give you other information. And it will give you sets of details and data. And there is no doubt in my mind that what we are seeing right now in terms of the way AI, artificial intelligence, and these tools are growing, that A, they're here to stay, and also that they're going to be around for and make a bigger impact in our world. And one of the things that Elon Musk has talked a lot about, and a number of people that high up in sort of companies have mentioned, is the role and the responsibility that we have as human beings for how we let robots go forward. And I'm not a big sci-fi fan, but I've seen enough of RoboCop and enough of films in the past to know that if you're not careful, the robots could take over the world. And there's some really interesting scenarios and conversations and discussions people are having right now about what that will look like. And if you actually search, there was a really interesting video, and but what we're seeing right now is not just a new phenomenon. If you actually search for, and I'll put a link into it if I can, in 2018, Sundar Pichai, the Google CEO, showed a call that was made by a robot in 2018, so 5 years ago, was made by a robot to a hairdressing salon to book an appointment for someone. And the conversations back and forth between that people, it sounded like a real conversation. So it was like quite scary when you sort of see this happening. And that was 5 years ago. So what technology they've got right now is mad. The ability for people to do so many things, and the way in which this can be used to apply learning to do different things is probably going to have major positive impacts on the world and what it can do. But I wanted to also talk a little bit about what it's not going to do. And I think one of the things for me around salespeople and the 5 characteristics that I talk about that are critical for sales success, and I've talked about this for a long time, but and the concept has been around for a while, but I think it's even more important than ever before, is as we move into this futuristic world where robots and technology can do so many things, I still think there are 5 key factors that are critical in order to enable you to achieve sales success that I don't think a robot will be able to do quite yet. And because of that, I still think that if you're in sales, or if you learn to sell or can build sales skills and technique, it will be the thing that is the last thing for the robots to conquer, if that makes sense. Now, you might think I'm wrong. You might tell me that there is a robot that can go and sell exactly like me and can replicate what I do and won't have my issue, the things that I do badly, and won't be a human being and doesn't have to do some of the things that a human being causes trouble with. And if you talk to, if you look at factories, car production factories or factories over time, they've moved away from humans to robots because humans, need to have holiday, and humans need to go to the loo, and they want a lunch break, whereas robots don't need that. And that's why companies have created, robots that do all of those different tools. But there are 5 key things that I think are critical in sales that make sales a success. And when I look at the things that make brilliant salespeople, it's these 5 things that I don't think right now a robot can do. Now, but if you think I'm wrong, if you're listening to the podcast and you're an AI expert and you think they can do these things, then tell me, show me. I'm very much open to listening. And if I need to adjust my approach even more as a salesperson, then hey, do you know what? I'll do that. But I think these 5 things are the critical factors that why a robot can't be able to replicate a human being quite yet when it comes to sales. So the first thing, and these are based around so a guy called Daniel Goleman in 1969, I think the book, wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, or EQ. And what he talked around, it wasn't the brain. So people would previously measure people based upon their IQ. So in the UK, we had an organization called Mensa, and you could have this incredibly bright people that would get an incredibly high Mensa score. So I think I'm not sure what the record was, but something like, most people's average scores was 60 to 80. And if you were in Mensa, you were up at 150 or something like that. So you were very, very bright. But what they identified is that your IQ might be high, but your emotional quota is low. And if your emotional quota is not great, then unfortunately you basically are not going to be able to build the relationships and do the things you need to do to get the success you want. And it's why we sometimes see some people who are brilliant and clever at what they do, but just don't have any what we call people skills or emotional skills. And they don't have this emotional quota or this emotional intelligence to be able to operate in the way that can build business success in some cases. And I've known some really, really bright people who are incredibly talented, but just lose out in that area. They're unable to do some of the things that we'll talk about in a moment. So I think the 5 skills that Daniel Goleman talked about are critical. And what I've done is I've basically said, okay, and I've created a phrase called, so he created EI and I created ESI, Emotional Sales Intelligence. And the ability for you to look around these 5 elements and how they impact and effect on sales. And as I say, I don't think a robot right now can do these things. So what are these 5 characteristics that I don't think Chat GPT or any of these other clever, incredible tools can do right now? So the first one is, and this is a weird one, but it's the first one, is motivation. A robot doesn't have any motivation because it's not real. Now, as it stands right now, I don't think it's real. Now, obviously, of course, they can continue to repeat to do the same things, but when they're broke, and you need to get them fixed. Whereas a human being, we have motivations that are driven by different elements of emotions that we have inside of us. And so the motivation to want to do the best for your family, or the motivation to want to be successful or to beat something, whereas robots of course have be able to build learning styles, that emotion, they are still ultimately binary elements of yes or no, 0 or 1s. And so for me, I don't think they're going to have that ability to have that drive and motivation to do things at certain times when it needs to be done, especially in a sales situation. And so motivation is one of them, but that's probably not the most important one of the lot of them. The other 4 that I think are critical, though, are things that are really, really difficult to replicate in a robot. So the first one is self-awareness. Now, self-awareness, what is self-awareness? What is that concept in sales? Self-awareness is the ability to look at your situation and what's going on and around you, and to then be aware, to sort of reflect the mirror back on your approach as a person, to know whether what you're doing is having the impact that you want it to. And those people with very high IQ but low EQ just carry on doing what they're doing and don't think about other people. They're not able to comprehend and conceptualize that other people are involved in that process. They're not self-aware. They think when someone's, I love sport, and they sometimes say that a person was a really, really good, really good coach. He was tactically brilliant, but they were a bad communicator. They weren't able to communicate. They weren't aware that the people they were communicating with weren't able to pick up on the way they delivered that message or the way in which they spoke about something. And self-awareness in sales is critical. It's that ability to go, actually, I'm not sure that that person's reacting in the way I think they should. I maybe need to change my approach. Or it's that ability to go, I think I'm doing not the right, I think I'm invading someone's space here, that I can see from their reaction there that it looks like they're a bit uncomfortable, let me step back. Or in a sales situation, it's a classic case of, I can sense that this isn't the right time to ask that question about the deal because it just feels like something's not quite right. So it's that ability to be self-aware and watch and react to people and to then base different decisions upon that. And whilst it may happen, again, if there's a robot that can do this right now, I don't know of a robot or a tool that can have the same level of self-awareness that a person with high EQ that is great at business and sales will have. That ability to be self-aware of their situation. So that's the first thing. I think self-awareness is something that is going to take some time for that robot to realize that actually when they interacted in that way, the person did do something different and they will then change as a result of it. Now, I'm not saying they can't do it, because the good things that robots and computers do is they try things and then program themselves to know what worked and what didn't work. But I don't think it's going to happen straight away. The second part of emotional intelligence is self-control. And can robots have self-control? Of course they can. They're programmed to say things or not to say things. But where it has an impact in sales and business is to know what to do at the right time. And I don't think, and I don't see any evidence yet, that a robot has the ability to maintain self-control so that when a conversation is happening, they can resist the urge to talk, or they resist the urge to do something that they previously would have had an emotional reaction to do. And for example, give an example of self-control, which and emotional control, which is something, let's say you're in a sales conversation and there's a silence. Silence is a good thing in sales. It's a good thing, but people don't like silence. It feels awkward for them, and so therefore what they do is those that haven't learned the ability to be self-control then want to use words, or when they're talking about their price, they feel uncomfortable about it, so they talk over something. Whereas a self-control, the ability to have self-control or control your emotions, is to be able to say something and then resist that urge to do something. And even if that person doesn't respond for 10, 20 seconds, to stay quiet. Now, I'm not sure what would happen in that robot situation. Can they build that in? Maybe, I don't know. But the reality is, if you can develop the ability to have self-control, as my mum always used to say to me, count to 10, or speak now, forever hold your peace. It's sort of, you want to be in a position where you resist that urge to talk. Because more often than not, when something affects us or says to us that we don't feel comfortable with or we're annoyed with, our reaction is to say, oh, I want to react and respond to it, rather than to be able to breathe, be in control, and wait for that to change. And so many fights and issues that occur in the world right now are because people don't have any self-control. And by the way, I, as a human being, suffer the same way as you do around self-control. Sometimes I find it a challenge to not have something nice when I want it, or to resist that urge. It's a difficult thing for us all to master. But in a sales situation, if you can learn to master the ability to self-control and not say something rather than say something, or to hold your tongue for a little bit, or give it, wait 24 hours before you respond to something, and don't show that emotional neediness, then I think it can make a huge difference. And I don't think at the moment a robot can do that. So that's the second thing, self-awareness and then self-control. The third thing is around building relationships and socialization, as Daniel Goleman called it. And again, whilst one day I might go to a party and I might be talking to someone and I might think, oh, they're lovely. And then I, literally turn around and they've plugged themselves into the wall and they're a robot, right? But the reality is, at the moment, I don't think that's happening. So I don't think a robot can do that. And the ability to build relationships and to connect with people and to think about and to use your self-awareness to build a relationship and to build that rapport with someone, I don't think is there. And yet it's a critical part of sales. We all get told we've got that 7 seconds to make an impact with someone, to build that engagement. So I think that part of being able to socialize and build relationships and build connections as human beings is not something a robot's going to do, but yet it's critical in business and it's critical in sales and selling. And if you're very good, and it's an area I particularly love, to be able to go in and have a conversation with someone and not focus on you, because again, I'm self-aware, I don't want it to be about me, but to get to know people and to understand them, to make them think they're lovely, and to make them think he's helpful and he's useful. Build that relationship where you get to remember their name and what they did and do something nice for them, or make a nice comment without being creepy. It's those elements around relationships that you can do. Then I think that's a critical factor to have in sales. And it enables you to go on and doing incredible things. People still buy from people. They want to know that someone understands them and builds a relationship with them. And that know, like, and trust that people talk about is critical in sales. So I don't think a robot can do that right now. Again, might happen, but it's a critical part of sales and selling. So it's why, and we're still, for however long, even though robots might start, Chat GPT is taking place. If I go to certain industries and certain communities and talk to them about Chat GPT, they're still going to say, no idea what you're on about. So whilst it's going to grow and affect certain industries, there are others it's going to take time to affect. And in that time, if you're a salesperson or a business person that wants to get better at selling or build a career or earn and be successful, I think you can achieve great results from building these skills. And in 20 years' time, we all might be redundant, and we all might be connected to living like a Wall-E lifestyle on a planet somewhere because the Earth's gone funny. But until that point, we're still going to interact with other humans and use our skills to do the right things. So that's the fourth point, socialization. And the fifth point, which I think is probably one of the most critical skills of the lot, is empathy. And Daniel Goleman talked about how empathy is seeing, in the eyes, is not just seeing in the eyes of other people, it's thinking like them, it's putting yourself in their shoes. And I talk to salespeople and business people a lot about empathy being, can you put yourself in their shoes really and think like them? Or what are they thinking? What are they going through right now? How are they feeling? How are they operating? And then think, what would I do if I was them? And as I talk about a lot in sales, sales is about getting inside the mind of your buyer, your prospect, and really being a fly on the wall in their brain. And if you can't build that empathy and really think like them and ask yourself difficult questions that probably you wouldn't normally ask yourself, but you do when you really get inside a buyer persona, then it's difficult to achieve the success you want. And again, I don't think robots at the moment can show empathy, right? I mean, the funny thing, you always used to watch RoboCop, and that was years ago, but the robot would do what he was programmed to do. He didn't have any empathy for the person. Even if it tried to, it was hard to build that and achieve that. Now again, they may well be developing tools. There's something we've not yet seen that can do that, but it's one of the things that I think is going to be the last to be added into robots, into artificial intelligence, systems, computers, whatever you want to call it, that can do some of these things. And the ability to have empathy and really resist. And this article where Sundar Pichai did this interview about with a robot interviewing a hairdresser, whilst it might well be great that they could book the appointment, if the person on the other end had said they've gone through a really difficult time, would the robot be able to say, I'm so sorry to hear that, and talk to me more about it, and I had that issue before and this happened, and really build that empathy and connection? I don't think so yet. So there we have it. Those are the 5 things that I think are critical in sales success: emotional intelligence or emotional sales intelligence, self-awareness, self-control, the ability to build relationships and socialize, the ability to have empathy, and the 5th one, which we talked about, was motivation. And I think at the moment, whilst the world is going mad around Chat GPT and what it can do and how it can rule our world and run our world, I think those 5 areas are the final frontier for robots to conquer. And when they do, we're probably all going to be in a position where we're living in a technology land, or we might be on another planet somewhere. But until that time, if you want to be successful in business, develop those skills, focus on what those look like, how you can adjust them to use and approach your business and your career in a different way. And if you do, I think you're going to be able to see results that can help you not just achieve things, but build better relationships with people, build better relationships with your loved ones, those that matter in your life, when you can adapt your EQ alongside hopefully your intelligence and your brain. So look, that's my thought on, it's no doubt at all, if you haven't had a look at these tools, Chat GPT is a great tool to use. It does provide some simple suggestions for people. Someone to me the other day compared it to a sous chef, preparing the vegetables, but you still need to check things, and they might prepare things, but the head chef needs to make sure it all looks right. And I think that's a good way to look at it. It's not going to do everything for you, but it can certainly save you some time and help. But the world's going to get inundated with lots of content that's manufactured by a robot. So the way to stand out is to build that personal brand and to build that personal awareness and those skills that we've talked about to make sure that you can, if you like, still be employed or deployed rather than being used rather than a robot taking your role. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on Chat GPT and artificial intelligence. It's March 2023. Let's see where we are in a year's time with it. It may well have changed, but that's my view on what that looks like. So I hope that's been helpful and giving you some ideas. Focus on those 5 skills. But I always like to finish the podcast focusing on a inspirational story. And I wanted to share a story today about a guy called Jake Fleckney. Jake is a guy that I've been following on Instagram for a little while. He is an ex-Marine. He has done some incredible challenges. And the reason being, and I come across Jake because there's a machine at the gym where I go to called the Ski Erg. And if you've never seen this machine, it's sort of a machine that it's like a ski and you sort of look like you're skiing. So you pull these ropes down. And I like my challenges, and I'm going to do a podcasting time around challenges. And I was thinking to myself about, I'd like to look at a challenge. I wonder, what one of the world record holders is for this ski erg. And I looked at this guy, Jake Fleckney, who did 23 hours. He broke the world record for being on a ski erg, 283,000 meters he did in one consecutive go. He didn't let go of the ski erg. And I thought to myself, and he's also one of the world record holders for rope climbing. So this guy is he's got a brain that focused on doing these incredible things. And when I saw it, I was like, wow. He's just also finished rowing the Atlantic as well. So Jake Fleckney is a man that obviously loves a challenge and puts his mind into these places to be inspirational. But I think if you watch some of the interviews he's given, he's keen to help other people that maybe has some challenges, deal with those challenges and show themselves it's possible. And I love that sort of story. So Jake Fleckney is the one I'm going to share his Instagram stories. You can have a look at it. That's who I think is today's inspirational story. He's the world record holder at the moment for ski erg, and 23 hours on one machine. Fair play to him. I think that's an incredible thing. And if he can do it, what stops you? So there we go. That's the podcast for this week. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like and subscribe to the podcast. Please rate it. Please share it with other people so we can get loads of other people some insights around how to build their emotional sales intelligence skills for great results. And if you haven't liked it, then hey, tell me as well. I'm a salesperson. I'm used to any feedback of all kinds. Feedback is good. It helps me improve. So please let us know what you think to it. If you love it, though, please share it with others. And let's make sure we get everyone, as many people as possible, getting the success they want to achieve the life they want before the robots take over. That's it from me. See you next week.